For sure. It's actually a fairly large question. I've done a fair bit of things in my life that have led me to today. But my name is Derek Selinger, and I on Twitter I go by the Story Mentor, and I think if you were to describe me in a brief phrase, would be I'm a storyteller. Like that. That's what I've done most
Hmm.
consistently through all of the things I've done in my career. But I worked in higher education. I coached college basketball for 7 years. I then ran away and joined the circus, became a full time performing illusionist, traveled over the world doing that on cruise ships, performed on various television um, uh, programs. I was recently on Penn and Teller's Fool Us, which was pretty
Okay.
cool. Uh, and and then, kind of in the midst of doing that, I also started a production company first and foremost for my own needs, but then I was serving small companies and artistic organizations like opera companies and those types of things, and creating boutique video for them. I've also, within that, done some music videos and a couple award-winning short films, and that was a really interesting part of my career of running that company. And then, of course, COVID hit and everything had to change. And I started to really become a lot more focused on helping others tell their story, giving them the tools, particularly entrepreneurs, helping them understand how to really leverage the not only the art of storytelling, but their own stories to create a unique position within the market.
Okay. No, I think that's a good summation, right? And very high level. But you said if you could like kind of crack it down to a single thing, is that you're a storyteller. So how did you become a storyteller, or would you say that people are born storytellers and they just need to kind of cultivate that skill?
Yeah, I do think that we are all born storytellers. Like, if you want to see the essence of storytelling, you talk to a 5 year old, that wants something.
Hmm.
They're able
Okay.
to
Yeah.
articulate what they need in a manner that is frankly motivational, right? They're gonna bring all this other information into what they want you to understand and why they want the thing they want. So we kind of are born with it, and we become more sophisticated in our storytelling. And more often than not, we relegate ourselves to a place of thinking that storytelling is only for the professionals. It's for the people in
Mm.
Hollywood or on screen or people that train for years and years and years. Uh, but the truth of it is we're all constantly telling a story. Every second of every day, we're
Hmm.
telling a story. If not to someone else, we're telling that story to ourselves. Like our motivation is all about the story we tell ourselves. And so becoming a better storyteller not only makes you better at being, promoting a service or building a business, but it actually allows you to become a better human being because it allows you to better understand who you are. And, and we need to monitor the stories that we ingest and we put in our own brains.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of curious though how you had that epiphany of doing all the things you did in your life, coaching basketball,
Yeah.
illusionist, working in the circus, and then pulling from that and saying, "Oh, I am a storyteller and I want to teach other people how to tell their story." It just doesn't seem like that's,
Intuitive.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess probably the big initial moment happened when I was 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, my mom
Mm,
sat me down at a table over a glass of milk half full. And she told me this story that when she was pregnant with me, she was electrocuted or shocked. She didn't die. And
mm,
it was the first trimester of pregnancy. And the doctors said, you know, your baby's not going to live. You should probably just
mm.
abort just for your own comfort. And if it does live, it certainly won't be normal, which is true. Um, and
Yeah.
my mom told me this story when I was 8. And at 8 years old, I had two distinct thoughts. The first is that I have superpowers. Like, I mean, I was
Yeah.
electrocuted before I
Very
was
cool.
born, right?
Hmm.
Like, I literally tried to
Yeah.
fly. Like, I jumped off a bed and it didn't work out. Maybe that's why I became a magician. Um, And the second thought, this is a really profound thought for an 8-year-old. It's this idea that my life's a gift and I'm here for a reason and life matters. Like that's a big thought for an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
And that became like a driving force all the way through my life. I was committed. I was constantly committed to trying to understand excellence, how to be involved in the world. It just kind of maybe grow up maybe a little quicker, but also allowed me to stay young a bit longer. Uh,
Hmm.
and my initial plan was to go and get a theology degree and then a doctor, become a medical doctor. That was what I was going to do. But as I was working on my first degree, I realized I don't want to be a doctor. I like actually communicating. And when I graduated, I got a job in the institution I graduated from, in charge of the residence program. I loved that job. And then I got to coach basketball, which I played in college
Hmm.
as well. And it was just it was an amazing season, not only to be involved in these young folks' lives as they're developing, but also to really experiment with communicating. Like if you're going to, if you're going to lead college kids, you got to be able to tell stories. You just do. You have to relate.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
it was an amazing training ground, and I used magic a lot to kind of break the ice. During that time, I met a Las Vegas headliner by the name of Jeff McBride, and Jeff is a legend in the magic community, absolute legend. Uh, Probably one of the most awarded magicians ever to live. And he was performing a show in a city near where I lived, and I went to the show. And he also was going to have like a training workshop for the local magicians. You pay like $100, you go to it. So I decided I was going to do that, even though I had no money, and
Okay.
paid my $100 and walked into the room, and there was this long boardroom table. I put a chair at the most comfortable chair I could find at the head of the table, and I sat next to it. I told everybody that's where Jeff was going to sit. And when he came in, that's where he sat. And he struck up a conversation with me, had me perform something for him. And at the end of his session, he turned to me and said, I think you need to come to Las Vegas and study with me. Oh, this
Hmm.
is like,
Yeah.
that's a pretty
That's crazy.
big moment. And Jeff was beginning to really pour his knowledge into other magicians and trying to mentor them. And I was one of his early mentees. And under his tutelage, I developed my act and
Hmm.
won some nice awards, won the People's Choice Award at the big world championship thing. And that launched me into a whole new career. So I left higher education and I became a performer. And I
Yeah.
just performed. Now, as amazing as that is, and I did love it, I had this education and this understanding of business. So I was really interested in how I could parlay my ability to communicate and my ability to entertain into helping corporate audiences better understand how to be great at their jobs. So I became a corporate speaker and I started to speak
Okay.
at different conferences and those types of things. And, and, and in the middle of that, I started to produce my own videos because, I mean, this is back in the day. This is like a long time ago, man, early 2000s.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
video was so expensive. Like if you wanted someone to do a promo video for you, it was ridiculous. You'd be broke.
Mm.
And I wanted to do a lot of content. So I started to learn the craft of filmmaking. Um, and so glad that I did. It became a corporation for me, which I was able to, I was a going concern for many years. But then I also got to express myself artistically. And my stage shows is a synthesis between performance and video or film. Um, and it's still a big part of what I do. And I love it. So that was a long story,
Yeah.
but yeah, that kind of gets you through.
No, yeah, I think yeah, that kind of almost takes us up to present day, right? So you were doing corporate speaking gigs,
Yeah.
and then when did you, if I'm understanding correctly, you now focus on entrepreneurs, and is it more like one-on-one coaching? Is that fair?
Yeah, that is fair. There's kind of two branches. I'm about just under 2 weeks away from my very first TED talk or TEDx talk. I'm speaking in Cape
Very cool.
May. Yeah, I'm super excited. My topic is called "Why We Need to Dream Like Children." Uh, it's
Hmm.
it's like it's my passion and has been my passion for about 15 years is encouraging people to dream and dream big and not just saying it, but like, how do you actually do that? We hear dream big, but how do you actually do that? So that's kind of what I would call a mass market conversation. I think it's appropriate for everyone. I'm specifically targeting, millennials who are in this phase where they want to really express themselves. But in the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial space, yeah, I have an offer that I, I have it under the radar. I haven't launched it kind of publicly, but I help high level entrepreneurs craft their origin story. I think it's probably the most valuable piece of content they own. And they need to have it ready for use cases like going on a podcast or if they get called onto a
Yeah.
television show. And a lot of these guys don't understand how powerful their story is, and they haven't thought through how to actually develop how to tell it. So I help these guys develop their origin story, and it's super satisfying, and it helps them a lot.
Yeah, so let's hold that thought. I want to get into that framework, but I also want to back up a bit
Sure.
because I think we were talking about earlier how everyone is kind of born a storyteller, and
Hmm.
you kind of outlined your whole career and that trajectory. And I'm curious, was it just life experience how you became a good speaker and
Hmm.
communicator and storyteller, or was there a framework you used or a mentor that helped you along the way? Because I didn't like really, it sounded like it's just experience from your story that you told me, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious how you develop that skill.
Yeah. I think it's all of the above. And I think this is the difficult part for people is the journey is varied. It's the hero's journey. If you're familiar at all with the hero's
Hmm.
journey, and at the beginning of the hero's journey is this call to adventure, where you realize you need to go to it. But along the path, what do you find? You find Merlin, right? You find the mentors as you want to go and
Yeah.
confront the monster. So it is experience, but it's also mentorship, and it's also frameworks along the way, and also magic swords that you find, right? It's like all of these different components kind of build in, and the only way to discover them is by doing it. And this is probably the biggest problem in our current culture is we're really interested in gathering information for us to do the things we want to do. But the simple fact is that we do need to gather information, but we also need to do. You need to do what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like you told me as we were starting this, you've just begun this journey of podcasting, and good on you, because there's no way to learn how to do this well without actually,
Yeah.
as Seth Godin says, shipping the work, right? You've got to do the creative
Hmm.
work. So yeah, experience is big, but like I was a pretty shy kid. My
Hmm.
mom forced me into musical theater, which I thank
Okay.
her for now. All right,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hated it at the time, but it got me on stage. It got me at a young age. I was like, "You got to go out there." Oh gosh, I don't want to. I'd rather be playing with my Lego. But you got to go on stage, and that forced me out of this bubble and put me in a place of confronting my fear, and that helped. And when I was young, I got a speaking mentor. I started to speak professionally when I was just 14 years old. Um,
Mm.
and that was because of a mentor who saw that I was able to articulate at a young age, and there was opportunity, and he helped me develop that. So it was like a specific person helping me develop not just the content, but how to speak, how to stand, how to enunciate, like how to be. And you don't need to be 14 to do that. You could be 44 and step into
Yeah.
this world and develop that, right? And then through my my college years, I took courses on speaking and speech construction and storytelling and those types of things, which helped a lot. So it's all of those things you've described.
Got it. No, that makes sense. And then now let's jump back ahead to the origin story, kind of what you teach
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and I'm curious what you say to people that say, "Hey, I don't need to be a storyteller. I have an amazing product, or I'm an amazing software engineer.
Yeah.
My work speaks for itself. Why do I need to tell a story?" Um,
Yeah.
And I don't know if you get that often, but it seems like maybe something you may get, or
Yeah.
people not understanding the value and what you tell people when you hear that.
Yeah. I think it was 3, 4 years ago, like it was a bigger deal because the world seemed normal. you know? Now I think people are starting to understand, holy smokes, especially with the advent of AI, like we need to differentiate. I think that
Mm,
it's a much easier sell now than it was 3 or 4 years ago. But even 3, 4 years ago, it'd be like, okay, you got a great product. That's wonderful. How are you going to talk about it? You know, how are you going to tell people about that product? And the best way to tell people about that product is to contextualize it. And the best way to contextualize it is to do it personally. Um, you could tell people, and it's the old marketing adage: is are you going to talk about benefits or features, right? Well, most entrepreneurs, most people that create products want to talk about the features, because that's what
mm,
that's what we get jacked up about. It's like, oh man, I got this cool thing, that makes everything work. I got to tell you about it. Well, generally speaking, the public doesn't care much about. They do care, but not as much about the features as how the features will benefit them. And the best way to do that is contextualizing it. So this is why we have testimonials where we tell our customers, experience with the product or service. And this is all very important storytelling. But the primary story that I think people that creates trust and creates confidence, by the way, the word
mm,
confidence, the root of it is to confide. The root of confidence is
mm,
storytelling. So in order to create that confidence, you need to be able to tell your story as it intersects with what you're doing. The elevator pitch, for lack of a better term. You have to be able
mm.
to accurately articulate that in a manner that people will understand and trust you, and therefore be interested in learning about your product or service, especially in this very, very busy world of,
Yeah.
billions of products and services, and now AI taking over everything.
Yeah. So the way I look at it, right, like you said, you build trust and then that
Mm-hmm.
moves people to action. And
That's
it
right.
kind of goes back to the point I made. If you have the best product, but nobody knows about it because you don't know how to tell them about it, then you are still at zero, right? You need to,
100%.
I mean, it's the power of marketing essentially from a business standpoint.
Yeah, it's the very vogue thing now is personal brand. There's everybody's talking about and it is that. Uh, and it's also like I think most people are able to get into some type of articulation of how they got to where they are. But how can you get to that place in a manner that really serves an audience? Like one of my sales questions I ask people is, if you got called by Joe Rogan, right, or Connor to be on their
Yeah.
podcast today, right? They're right
Hmm.
there, right?
Hmm.
You got called to be on their podcast, that you got an opportunity. Are you ready to go? Can you step onto this stage with confidence and go, I know who I am and what I'm going to say and where I want to take the people listening to me? Do you know that? And are you able to accurately articulate that? Most people aren't. And it isn't because they have a bad story. It's just they haven't worked on it. They haven't gone through
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
process. And, I've got an 8-step proprietary process that I take my people through. So when they're done, they've got a use case ready and they can then adapt it to other use cases. But anybody can do it. It's really 3 steps. It's inventory. You need to inventory your
Hmm.
story, and then you have to structure your story in a way that makes sense. And then you need to find some type of motif or thread that makes people really interested in what you're talking about. Right.
Hmm. No, I think that's good. And I don't know how much it would be interesting, but you don't have to go into it if it's proprietary. But
Yeah. Yeah.
like what you teach your students, and then also maybe you could explain to the audience what the hero's journey is, because I've heard of that before, but I think that is kind of where storytelling starts, right? Or if you think
Yeah.
about all the big Disney movies or Pixar movies in general, they kind of follow that trajectory. So I
That's
don't know
right.
if you wanted to maybe just speak to that from your
Yeah. Of
perspective. What
course.
is the hero's journey?
Yeah, the hero's journey is one of my favorite story structures. There are many story structures. Like if you Google story structure, like you said, you're going to get Pixar's. What is it? 23 questions or something like that. Um, Pixar has one. There's one like Save the Cat is one. And there's all of these, Freytag's Pyramid is another simple story structure. So we look at these story structures, and they're generally there for writers to try and understand how to organize their thoughts, because writers just like to, ramble. I am one, so I know I ramble. So it helps provide structure. But one of my
Hmm.
favorites is the hero's journey, because I think it really applies to the individual most effectively. Like the other ones, they're kind of like complicated plot structures for films or something, where the hero's journey, you could really see yourself in it, because we're trying to be a hero in our own story,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
as we're attempting to become this hero in our own story, this idea of a hero's journey really helps us understand what we're going through and contextualize it, so that we don't feel crazy when we're confronting difficulty. And that's what this journey does. And it's Joseph Campbell. Google it. It's quite involved. Um, but by digesting the hero's journey, I think that just about anybody interested in increasing their brand will get valuable information to kind of progress. With my clients, I use a version of that, and I just structure it in a slightly different way, and I use my
Okay.
expertise. Like, I've been telling stories for a very long time, so I can look at a narrative and very quickly pick out like the pillars, the hero's journey's pillars. What I provide for my clients isn't anything that they like. They could definitely do it on their own, and anybody watching this can do this on their own. What I provide is speed. I think that developing
Mm.
your origin story effectively takes, if you work at it consistently, it takes 6 months to a year if you work at it to get it to a
Mm.
place where you're like feeling really confident. I do it in 6 weeks, right? Because the people I work with, they've got they've got the money, but they need more time, and they need to get up on their feet quickly, right? But
Yeah.
for the viewer, you guys watching this YouTube video, I mentioned it earlier, but the first thing you have to do is take a uh, make a list of your experiences that got you to this point. Just literally brain dump everything you have
Mm.
done, and don't edit yourself. This is the biggest thing, is don't edit yourself. Just brain dump it, and maybe even record it like this. Then from there, if you just listen back to what you've gone through in your life, if you just listen back to it, you will see a repeating pattern. You will see it. I guarantee it. You'll see something coming up over and over again. Well, now you could take that repeating pattern and begin to create structure around it and create pillars to your story. And as you do that, you'll see how it progresses. Take a look at the hero's journey, watch how it progresses. The
Yeah.
most difficult thing, in my opinion, is finding the thread or the motif that pulls things through. So a motif is like, Christopher Nolan is the king of motifs in film, right? He's got these reoccurring images or ideas that happen over and over again within a film. A classic one is the top in Inception, right? It keeps spinning. You keep coming
Yeah.
back to it.
Yeah.
It is the metaphor, right? In all of Christopher Nolan films, there's the metaphor. And so um, finding the metaphor for your story that's where I'm good at what I do. But
Mm.
and that's what takes a lot of time, is because you got to find it and experiment with it and see if it connects to people. You know, in my story, which you heard me tell earlier, you will notice that I talked about that near death experience, right? The, uh,
Yeah.
my life's a gift. That's like my reoccurring thing. I use it over and over and
Okay.
over again. It's in all of my work. I have a theatrical stage show called The Gift. I just launched a new show called Box of Wonders, which is directly tying into this motivation, into this motif. Everything I do comes back to it. It's my thing,
Hmm.
my thread.
No, I think that's really interesting. I'm just curious. So, what if somebody says, "I don't have an interesting story," or "I'm very normal, vanilla." I hear what you're saying,
Yep.
but
Yep.
I won't be able to create something compelling.
Yeah. Uh, my friend Andre Heichel, oh, I'm pronouncing his name wrong, Junior on Twitter. He's a great young lad. Made his first million this last year at like 24 or 25. He's
Mm,
just crushing it, this guy. He's
nice.
such a solid
Yeah.
guy. He said exactly that to me when we first started working together. He's like, Derek, I want what you're offering, but I'm boring. Like, I'm not even that old. I'm a young guy. Like, how can I have a story that is compelling like that? You know? And I said, let's go. Like, work with me.
Yeah.
And he is shocked at how much content he has because we limit this. We limit ourselves in our own mind. We put in our own mind limitations on how good we think we are because we're constantly comparing our story to the person on Instagram or on YouTube or whatever, where it sounds
Hmm.
so amazing. All you're seeing when you see an amazing story of someone on Instagram, all you're seeing is the highlights. That's all you're
Yeah.
seeing. You're seeing everything compressed. Well, you can do that. All you have to do is collect the data, then compress the data, and you will have
Mm,
just as compelling of a story. You know, yeah, having a trained eye, someone like me, helps for sure. It makes it quicker. But if you just take the time and collect the data and then start compressing it, it's like in cooking when you find that, yeah, what's the word where you get the essence of the thing?
yeah.
You reduce it.
Reduction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reduction. When you do that and you get the essence of the flavor, the big truffle taste. Well, now you've got something super powerful. And I would dare say, as long as you have done something in your life, you have a story. I would say anybody
Yeah.
over 18 has a story that they can tell that is compelling. They just have to do the steps.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think people just don't think about it, right?
Yeah.
But I think similar vein, I want to ask you, what about people that say, okay, I believe you, but I don't have the confidence to put my story
Mm-hmm.
together and then to
Mm-hmm.
put it on display or speak
Mm-hmm.
publicly about it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, in speaking to you, it seems like you have a TEDx talk. You've been a performer. How did you develop that confidence? And what do you say to people that may think they lack that confidence?
Yeah. And I mean, it's a very real thing to say. One of the biggest fears people have is getting on stage in front of a room full of people. It's like one of the top fears that many people have, and it makes total
Hmm.
sense to me. I have been afraid in my life. It's not like I came out and was like, "Hey, I'm super confident guy." Like the first magic
Hmm.
show I ever performed, okay, I was just like this hobbyist guy working at this college, and they needed an entertainment night for some of the students. And they asked me if I could do a bit of magic. And I'm like, I suppose I could put something together. I mean, I'm no professional, but I could do something. They thought there'd be about 50 kids in the room, which I'm like, okay. I put together this show. I walked in, there's 700 kids in the auditorium.
Yeah.
And I wanted to run away so bad. I was terrified. I got myself on stage. I have the footage still. I have shown no one because it's bad. Right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was good enough, and I did it. I went through that experience, and I remember finishing going, I never want to be that afraid again. Like it was like throw up, like crawl into a crevice afraid. Like I was so afraid. So what I did is I started to go to restaurants in my community to perform magic for people while they waited for their food. Just,
Mm,
a couple at a table. Like if I bomb for a couple at a table, it's not the end of the world. That's okay. So I
yeah.
just started to do that. And it's cold exposure, right? It's hormesis. It's exposing
Hmm.
yourself to something that's uncomfortable. And if you do that long enough, you become accustomed and you build up the strength. So I did that. And guess what? After a year of doing that, I did that show again and I was way better and way more confident. And I was not as afraid. I was still a little afraid, Now I generally don't get nervous. However, I will tell you,
Hmm.
when I went on Penn and Teller Fool Us, I was nervous, probably for the first time in forever. Huge stage in front of two legends. I played Russian roulette with hangman's nooses. There's an element of risk to that. You don't want to mess that up. Um, I was
Yeah.
nervous, but you just rely. It's training. It's the same thing you wouldn't get in a fight in a boxing ring. The first day you wouldn't get in there with a heavyweight. That's ridiculous. You wouldn't go
Yep.
into a proper fight. You train first. Well, speaking and presenting and being in front of a group is the same thing. You practice it. You do what you're doing, right?
Yep.
And set the bar low, and then build up over time. Start with spaces on Twitter or something. You know, just
Yeah.
get in the rhythm.
No, I think that's fair, and I think you realize that as you go through life and
Yeah,
you get older. But if you're younger and you see someone ahead of you, and I used to do the same thing, I used to think like look up at the VP of whatever company I
yeah,
worked for and say, "Oh, I'll never be like him or like her." But then you just realize that they're just people that have a lot of experience and that they've
yes,
slowly made their way in that direction. So it's just a misconception. It's really obvious when you talk about it, but
yeah. Well,
that
there's
fear can be paralyzing.
exactly there's this common phrase that is not altogether correct. It's that comparison is the thief of joy.
Hmm.
I think it's a misstatement. False comparison is the thief of joy. You don't learn if you don't compare. If I want to teach
Yeah.
you a basketball shot, I need you to watch how I do it so that you can understand it and emulate it. Like that type of comparison is extremely helpful. But no way should you, like, as a, let's say a 12-year-old, be comparing your basketball game to LeBron James. That's insane. That's a false
Yeah.
comparison. So it's all about
Yeah.
understanding what context you're in right now and doing the proper type of comparison, the proper type of market research so that you can improve. And then when you go to the higher levels, you compare to, more and more advanced individuals.
Yeah. I think it makes sense. Look, maybe it's like one step ahead of you.
Yeah.
Who's that role model that you
Yeah.
can look to,
Yeah.
and then go from there.
Exactly.
Um, okay, so I kind of want to, and I think I know your answer to this, but you said if you're over 18, right, you should have a story. So, I mean, do you believe that everyone, let's just say you're a freshman in college, you're just starting, should you work on your origin story now, or should you wait until you start a business, or
Mm-hmm.
why should that person work on that, refining that origin story?
Yeah. I think that you do yourself a great service to work on it now. Uh, it, it just gets you ready for to you're building a tower with Lego. So it's easier to add the details now than in 10 years because you're going to forget stuff. You know,
Yeah.
our memories are faulty. So 10 years from now, you'll be like, okay, when I was a freshman, I remember I did this one thing and it really made an impact. How did that go again? Like, record all this stuff if you can, put it down on paper. We've got voice notes. Use AI to collate and organize your experiences so you can recall them as you move forward. And even now, as a freshman, what is a resume if you want a job? It's your origin
Yeah.
story. It's just,
Yep.
it's through the lens of a specific type of work, right? In fact, I've helped many people get jobs. I'm gonna give you a nugget on how to get a job. It's understand how your origin story, your story relates to the corporation story. It's less to do with skills.
Hmm.
I mean, you need the skills, but if you learn the culture and story of a corporation and are able to reflect that in your interview, you're way more likely to get the job, right? Um, and
Yeah.
and the only way to do the relating is to understand your own story. When I was 12, I got my first job picking up garbage at the town fair, right? It taught me this. That's part of your origin story in that context. So absolutely work on it now. There is, you'll put yourself way ahead of the curve if you do.
Yeah. 100% on board. So maybe we can kind of refine that process. I think earlier you were talking about how you just do a brain dump, and maybe you can
Yeah.
keep it really high level, but what are the next however many steps to get to a rough draft and say, okay, I kind of have something that I'm working with here. You go brain dump, and then where do you go from there?
Yeah. I'll talk briefly about the three parts of creation. When you are creating anything, there's kind of three phases. The first phase is adding material, right? Like I'll relate to making a statue. So if you're going to create a statue, you need the material. You have to get the necessary material. The second part, and the more painful part, is removing material, understanding what
Mm.
you need to take away to bring the image you want out and to make that project to the audience. And this is hard because when you're doing it with your story, you are literally removing parts of yourself from the narrative. And that's painful because you should be attached to those parts, but you have to remove them
Yeah.
to get to the point. And then you may cycle that. You may go, oh, I removed too much. I need to add some more. So, and then the third phase is polishing, where you're just like taking these little, this is literally where I'm at right now with my TED Talk is I've added all this material and refined it. Now I'm like working on how to say a word the right way that it really lands. Like, to
Hmm.
say didn't instead of did not, or do I say didn't first and then did not second? Like this is the polish level that I'm
Yeah.
at right now.
Wow.
But that's where you want to get to. Now, the first phase, again, using that metaphor, is you want to take all of your narrative, everything you could think of, remembering fishing with your uncle, gesturing too loudly and hitting your thing, fishing with your uncle.
No, all good.
You want to remember, the experience you had in school. Just put all of this stuff on paper. And then the second phase is, like I said earlier, you're going to go through and you're going to look for the recurring theme that relates to the thing you want to talk about. I will say this, telling your story is entirely dependent upon context. So you have to have a use case in mind. Where are you going to use the story? If you're just kind of just like creating this general story, you're probably going to get frustrated because you won't understand where it fits. So when I work with my people, and I highly recommend this for everyone else as well, is think of a use case, even if it's fabricated.
Hmm.
Maybe think about what would I talk about on Joe Rogan. If I got on, such and such reality show and they were asking me about me and what makes me tick, how would I express myself on that show? Or if I,
Okay.
or if I was going for my dream job and I was going to explain it to the interviewer, create a hypothetical use case in your mind that allows you to construct. Because once you get your story constructed for one use case, it's way easier to adapt that for another use case, because you've got the content already. Now you may go,
Yeah.
oh, I'm now no longer doing a podcast. I'm now going to deliver a 1-hour speech to 14-year-olds. Okay, well, maybe I need to add some more of this other material in, right? And you refine again,
Got it.
but it's way easier.
So a lot of what you talked about, it seems, is having one core origin story and then adapting it to different situations. But if
Yeah.
I think about a storyteller too, right? I mean, you could think of a fictional author that is just creating a story and
Mm-hmm.
characters out of thin air. So would you say that working on your origin story kind of contributes to that other skill of storytelling, regardless
Oh,
of
yeah.
subject matter?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I think, all storytelling is art. It's a living art. Doesn't exist unless you're using it, right? Um, if you if a tree falls in the forest, does anyone hear it? Who knows? But if you
Hmm.
tell your story to no one, no one hears it. So um, it's all about context and creating this living art, and then adapting it. Yeah, I'm a big believer in just doing it. You know, all of my biggest leaps in my life and my career were from putting myself out there in uncomfortable
Hmm.
ways. And again, I've been doing this a long time. So somebody may, watch my TEDx talk or watch me on Fool Us and go, oh man, you're so good. You're really good at this. You're very talented. This is the big one. You're very talented. you're very gifted. Well, there may be some natural proclivity to learn some of this stuff in there, but believe me when I say it was a ton of work, like
Yeah.
constant effort. And it still is. I practice every day. Every day I am working on my craft, whether that's storytelling or the physical part of, like, would you like to see the simplest magic story? I'm going to show you. I'm
Yeah.
going to show you the
Let's do it.
simplest magic story. This right here is the world's smallest deck of cards. All you do is add water.
Yeah.
Right?
And
And
that's a story, right?
it
I mean,
is.
can you explain how that's a
You
story? Like,
bet.
is it, because it's so simple,
It
right?
is.
It's not what you think about. It's not a novel,
That's
but
right. It's
so.
beginning, middle, and end. It has a hook, a climax, and a conclusion. That's all
Mm.
you need. Beginning, middle, end, hook, climax, and conclusion. I actually generally, I use a technique called writing in reverse. And I've made a short video about it, and I have a PDF. If you go to my Twitter profile at the very top, I have it pinned. You could sign up for my newsletter and get this sent to you. And all it is thinking about your your storytelling backwards. So how do I want to end the story? Okay, now what is the big moment that will get my audience to that moment? Okay, and then how do I hook them into it? And then I fill in the blanks. It's
Hmm.
literally the easiest way to. Normally, we're like, okay, how am I going to start? And then we start telling a story, and we work up to this point. I
Yeah.
personally find writing in reverse. I've done this with my theatrical presentations. I just finished a book. I did that with my book. I wrote the conclusion first. I had that done before I even started the beginning. I knew exactly how I was going to end, and I knew what the big high point of it was. The rest I just kind of worked out as I wrote.
So I'm curious if there are any other advice you'd give anyone on building the skill, because we talked a lot about the origin story and whatever, you're writing your origin story to land your dream job. It seems a little daunting. It's like, okay, I'm going to look at my whole life and
Yeah,
refine it down to 3 minutes. I mean, is there anything else smaller that people can do? Like, is it getting up in front of people? I don't know if there's any groups or
yeah.
networking they can do where you just kind of public speak, or there's shorter exercises where it's like, okay, write a 1 minute story about X topic. I don't know. Any other advice that is working up to that bigger skill in origin story?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the people that I generally work with are like they're kind of high functioning established people, and so they're thinking at that level. But you're absolutely right. The skills can be developed in so many different ways, and really simple ways too. I mean, of course, you can get involved into formal, like there's things like Toastmasters where you could start to work on structure and speaking. I think that that's very valuable.
Hmm.
Most university and college courses have presentations as part of programs where you have to make a presentation. Well, if you have one of those, don't loathe it, embrace it. Like, this is an amazing opportunity for creation and feedback. And that's what
Yeah.
feedback is like. It's the golden ticket to becoming a better storyteller, both getting it and being open to it, because it hurts sometimes, you know, with other people telling you, I didn't get that. I don't understand that. Well, that hurts when you feel like you've been articulate. Um, but even in the most simplest of ways, like if you involve yourself in other activities in your life, whether that be, a sport when you're on a team or going to church or involved in a community group, you are going to have opportunities to speak and to tell stories. I grew up in Canada,
Yeah.
sitting in the dressing room, the hockey dressing room. Everybody's joking around, and what are they doing? They're telling stories. What was your week like? What was this like? What was that like? Well, the real key here is to not just participate, but to actually be just a little bit intentional with it. To maybe think to yourself, okay, I know I'm playing hockey tonight. I'm going to be in the dressing room. They're going to ask me how my week is. What do I like? Just thinking it through for 2 seconds
Hmm.
and then practicing it. They will not even know you're practicing it, but you will watch. Oh my gosh, I threw out this hook, and they were like, everybody paid attention, and you're going to see in
Yeah.
real time how storycraft works. And that's going to confide in yourself a true story that you're a good storyteller and give you confidence. And now you're going to be willing and able to step up into bigger and bigger stages.
Yeah, it'll click, right? And it's a little bit of feedback that keeps pushing you in the right direction,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Okay, I want to shift a little bit more to you, right? You've kind of given me your story up to this point. You've talked about how you're working on a TEDx
Mm-hmm.
talk, et cetera. I'm curious as you look to maybe the next 5 or even 10 years of your story from a business and entrepreneurial journey, where it's headed and what you foresee for yourself in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that question. This has been such a strange season for everybody with COVID.
Hmm.
At the beginning of the whole pandemic, everything was dropping the place. I was on Penn and Teller. I got invited on another major television show. I just played Vegas. Everything was clicking.
Yeah.
It was all popping. And then it all ended out of nowhere. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I had this whole plan and it was all happening.
Yep.
So now what? What do we do now? And I've been confronted with, do I really want to go back into that type of focus of trying to be a big deal in the entertainment world? And I've kind of come to the conclusion that if it comes to me, I would take it, but I'm not pursuing it with that same desire anymore. I've written this new show called The Box of Wonders, and it's literally built for 12 people around a table. It's a high-end theatrical magic experience where I'm telling stories, and I love it. I love it. I live on it.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I'm going to be doing that a lot. But that's not like it's not a huge money maker. It makes a bit of money, but it's not a
Yeah.
huge money. It's like my passion. Um, my my future is going to be continued helping entrepreneurs really hone their abilities as storytellers. I'm writing a couple books and continuing to be on stage as a speaker. I love speaking. I just love it. And corporations and organizations around the world are looking for some of the information I have on not just storytelling, but I've been doing some deep thought on how to stand out in the AI world. How
Hmm.
to really,
I like it.
yeah, because we have to, this is why storytelling is so important. And you can see they're connected. AI is very good at collating information, but it is not great at having a soul. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that we have. That's our advantage, our soul, our ability to relate. And it is the advantage. So I'm very excited about that. The TEDx thing has been my complete focus for about 4 months. It's all I've thought about. So once that's done in 2 weeks, then I'm going to take the next step to getting my offer out on the public stage.
And do you want to expand on what that offer is? Is
Yeah,
that specifically for entrepreneurs and
yeah,
whatever it is, a coaching package or a
that's right.
course
That's
that
right.
they can?
It's a coaching
Yeah.
package. Exactly right. It's a involved 6 week process where we together make your origin story cinematic and applicable to a use case. And then I have a select group that want to continue to work with me. And then we work on the skills, stagecraft, speaking, how to speak to different rooms and in different ways, and all those kind of those soft skills you need around the content. Uh,
Hmm.
I generally don't work with people on those things unless we've worked on the origin story first, because that's kind of like it's like the foundation,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
now we know we're on the same page, and now I can really help people understand how to project and make themselves known in other use cases.
No, I think it's a really valuable skill. I've heard a little bit about it, right? I knew about the hero's journey, but the
Mm-hmm.
way you've articulated it, I mean, communication is so key. You talked about COVID. A lot of stuff is digital right now, right? We're
Yeah,
talking through a computer screen, but I mean, you still have to be able to communicate to stand out. So I think you're doing great work.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, like this, I actually helped a lot of people um, during COVID with virtual presentations. A simple thing like you've got your camera nice and level with you, right? Which is
Hmm.
exactly right. You don't want your camera like here. I'll show you. You don't want your computer down here. You don't want to be talking to like this. This is like
Yeah.
terrible stagecraft. you know, it's horrible.
You're looking
see,
down on me.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking down on you, and it's not flattering. Like here's a little secret: if somebody's ever taken your picture, or videoing you, and you want to look uh, better,
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
at. Oh, here's the whole secret. You just lean into the camera. That's it. Like look at how I am here. I'm flat,
Hmm.
right? But as soon as I
Hmm.
do that, oh my gosh, now I'm contoured, and you know, it's such a small thing.
Yeah.
But in order for it to work, the camera has to be at chin level or slightly higher. You'll notice that my camera is slightly higher than chin level. And this is a stagecraft, a presentation secret that I've learned over years of doing this, is if it's slightly higher than chin level, it doesn't show any negative shadows down here. And now when I lean in, I look dynamic. Right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
these are small things,
Yeah.
but they make a difference.
Yeah. And like I would never have known that, right? So if
Right.
you don't know these little things, then that help you, right? And they build up, and so
Right.
yeah, super
If I
valuable.
watch another CNN interview or something like that with somebody with their freaking computer on the desk, I'm going to freak out. I have trouble taking somebody seriously as an expert when the computer is looking up at their chin. And it's so easy to solve. Just get a box or something and
Yeah.
put it like at eye level. That's it.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
yeah.
Hey, well, I'm glad I'm doing something kind of right.
You
So
are,
hey,
brother.
I
You're doing
learned,
lots of
yeah,
things
yeah.
right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very
I'm
nice.
excited for your podcast. I'm honored to be on it here in these early days before you blow up, become the next Joe Rogan. I'll be like, I was there
Yeah,
when.
yeah. Hey, I won't forget you if that happens. I don't know if that's gonna happen though. But hey,
Awesome.
yeah, man, I'm trying to hone my interviewing skills, right? Like I
Yes,
think that is a skill as
it
well. I don't know.
is.
Maybe you could speak to that. I don't know if you would
Yeah.
consider yourself an interviewer or how that fits in with storytelling, but that's what I'm trying to do by just getting repetitions in and just continuing to do it. So.
Yeah, it is. And I've done a lot of it. As part of my production company, we, uh, we hosted the production for major conventions, and I was like an interviewer for the convention.
Okay.
So I did a fair bit of it. And your last statement is exactly right. Doing it is the best way to learn it. Uh, but you're doing amazing. You're asking good open-ended questions. You're waiting for the answer. You're shifting things as because you're constructing the narrative of your podcast, right?
Yep.
I'm following your lead and where you want to go, and that's what a good interviewer should do, is guide the conversation. You're doing great. I would say that anybody that wants to be a podcast host, you watch guys, the big dogs do it. Of course, they're excellent at it, but guys
Yeah.
emerging in the field like yourself that are already doing amazing should absolutely be observed. People should watch you for that information because you already have such a great grasp of how to do it, and you just started, and you're doing awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Hey, maybe we'll end on a high note for me, I guess. I'm just
Absolutely.
kidding. No,
No.
no. So I appreciate that. And a lot of the reason why I do this as well, I'm just getting started, but I
Yeah.
like learning from other people,
Yeah.
right? Like you have a unique story and viewpoint on the world and business and everything. So at the very least, that's what I'm getting out of it. And so, hey, I appreciate you
Amazing.
taking the time, but I will give the floor to you as we close. I know you have a lot of stuff coming up. Coaching packages,
Mm-hmm.
TEDx talk. Tell people how they can find out about you or be notified when those things come available.
Yeah, you bet. Twitter is a great place to find me. I'm Derek Selinger. Story Mentor is my handle. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I have a YouTube channel as well called The Story Mentor, Derek Selinger, The Story Mentor. And I'd love to have you as part of any of those things. On my Twitter page at the top is a link to my newsletter. I write a weekly newsletter where I tell stories from my own experience from the road and try and make it applicable to all of our journeys. And that's also a great place to learn more about my TED Talk and TEDx Talk and where to find that. I'm super excited about that. I imagine that'll hit the TEDx or the TED YouTube page probably
Mm-hmm.
in about 6 weeks. They delay it by a few
Okay.
weeks after you deliver it live. I'm doing an extremely difficult piece of magic in the TED Talk. So, fingers crossed it crushes And that's
Yeah.
probably the best way to find me. Oh, my website is my name, DerekSelinger.com, and you can find out a bit about my arts and performances there.
No, hey, sounds great, Derek, and yeah, congrats on everything.